The transmission arrived without warning, deep in the black between galactic arms, where stars grew sparse in darkness. Stretched like a held breath, the Zalori war fleet emerged from its transit corridor, 23 ships, each one a blade, cast in alloys that had crushed 17 other civilizations into dust. Their commander, a battle-scarred male named Kalen Vex, stood on the observation deck of the flagship Unbroken Promise and watched the distant spark that was humanity's sun. He felt nothing, not anticipation, not doubt, only the cold certainty of a warrior who had never known defeat. Status of the Human Defensive Network. His voice carried through the bridge with the weight of absolute authority. The tactical officer, a female with faded combat marks along her jaw, consulted her display. Limited orbital platforms, approximately 200 operational warships of various classes. Their propulsion technology suggests a species barely capable of interplanetary travel. And their military history. A pause, disorganized, frequent internal conflicts. They have fought each other with unusual ferocity, but they're united. Military experience is negligible. Kalen's mandibles clicked in. Satisfaction, as predicted, of fractured species, violent but undisciplined, they will crumble when shown true military precision. He had delivered this speech before, to the Vorn, to the scattered colonies of the Thalan Combine, to the insectoid hive of the Cygnus Reach. Each time the result was identical: fear, negotiation, surrender. Humanity would be no different. Broadcast the demand, he ordered. Full spectrum, let them see what approaches. The transmission that reached Earth 11 minutes later was flawless. Kalen stood against a backdrop of warships, his armored form backlit by engine glow, his voice modulated to every frequency humanity used for communication. People of the third planet, you are now under the protection of the Zalari Dominion. Your independent military operations are terminated. Your governments will submit to our administrative oversight within one standard cycle. And GT snorts. And GT resistance will be met with force. We have mastered war across 300 worlds. You will not be the exception. On the Galactic Council observation platform orbiting the neutral world of Calath, ambassadors from 40 species watch the playback. Ambassador Toril of the Rishan Confederation shook his head slowly. Another border absorbed. The Dominion expands like fire through dry grass. The Veth representative, a creature of floating sensory organs, pulsed with indifferent light. Humanity has no allies, no advanced technology, no strategic value. The outcome is certain. No one disagreed. 4 light-years from Earth, aboard the Unbroken Promise, Kalen gave the order to advance. His fleet began acceleration toward the blue marble. He calculated the time to arrival, the hours of terror that would grip the human population, the desperate diplomatic pleas that would flood his communication channels. He was wrong about everything. The first indication came from his sensor officer. Commander, the human orbital platforms are changing configuration. Kalen glanced at the display. The primitive structures were indeed moving. Not fleeing, not reorienting for defense. They were spreading into a formation that made no tactical sense. Too dispersed for mutual support. Too aggressive for a species that should be begging for mercy. Their powering weapons, the sensor Officer continued, confusion bleeding into his tone, all platforms. Simultaneously, Kalen's confidence flickered. They intend to fire. They are firing. 17 nuclear warheads, each one a relic of humanity's most paranoid era, detonated in the path of the Zalari fleet, not as weapons, as signals. The radiation burst, washed over Kalen's ships, causing no damage but delivering an unmistakable message. We see you. We are not afraid. Commander, the communications officer interrupted. Incoming transmission from the human home world, audio only. Kalen nodded. The voice that filled the bridge was female, calm, precise. It carried no tremor of fear. Zalari fleet, you have entered sovereign human space. You will reverse your course and depart immediately. This is your only warning. The bridge fell silent. Zalari officers exchanged glances. No species had ever issued them a warning, not once. Kalen felt something he had not experienced in decades. Uncertainty. Ignore it, he ordered. Continue. Approach. The human speaker continued as if she had heard him. We have studied your dominion, your tactics, your history of conquest. You believe war has rules. You believe in proportional response and surrender protocols. You believe that the of combat is victory with minimal loss. A pause. When she spoke again, her voice dropped lower. We believed those things once, then we fought wars that nearly erased us. We learned the truth. The only rule of war is this: make sure the other side loses everything. The transmission ended. The Zalari advance fleet entered weapons range of the outer defensive perimeter. 4 hours later, Kalen had not slept. He stood at the command rail watching the tactical display update in increments of heartbeats. Human ships were moving, not clustering for protection, not retreating toward planetary defenses. They were accelerating toward his fleet. Combat readiness, he ordered. All batteries fire on my command. The human ships numbered 37, destroyer class vessels by Zalari standards, light armor, conventional projectile weapons. Nothing that should threaten a battle-hardened Dominion fleet. But they were fast, much faster than intelligence had suggested. They're burning hard, the tactical officer reported. Acceleration exceeding predicted maximum by 40%. They've removed safety protocols from their reactors. Kalen's mandibles tightened. No safety protocols meant the ships were flying on the edge of destruction. One miscalculation, one engineering failure. The crews would die. No species fought like that, not on the first engagement, not without provocation. Lock weapons, he said. Target the lead vessel. The human fleet changed formation, not the rigid lines of Zalari doctrine. Something fluid, organic. Each ship moved independently, yet in coordination, creating overlap fields of fire that shifted every few seconds. Kalen had seen nothing like it. His tactical computer struggled to predict their trajectories. They're using unpredictable vectors. The officer said, randomized acceleration. Our targeting solutions are degrading. Kalen made a decision. Fire at will. Saturation pattern. They cannot evade everything. The void between the fleets became light. Zalari weapons painted lines of destruction across the black. Human ships twisted through the fire. 2 exploded. 3 more spun away, venting atmosphere, but the others kept coming, closing distance, refusing to break. Then they fired back. Railguns, mass drivers, weapons, primitive that most galactic council species had abandoned them centuries ago, but at close range against ships designed to absorb energy weapons. The kinetic rounds punched through armor like fists through wet paper. The unbroken promise shuddered. Impact on the forward section, secondary explosions in 2 launch bays. Damage report, Kalen demanded. Hull breach on deck 7 through 9. Fire teams responding, casualties reported. He gripped the command rail hard enough to leave dents. Status of the enemy fleet. The tactical officer's voice had lost its professional calm. 17 vessels still combat capable. They're forming a new attack wave. A new wave. They had taken losses and were reorganizing in the middle of a battle without pause, without retreat. Kalen watched the human ships wheel through the wreckage of their own dead and accelerate toward him again. Their crews knew they were outmatched, knew their technology was inferior, knew they should be dying. They did not care. Commander, the communications officer, said, incoming transmission from the human flagship, video. Kalen nodded. The display flickered to life. A human male appeared, middle-aged, gray at the temples, blood running from a cut above his eye. He was smiling. Your fleet is impressive. Your weapons are superior. Your tactics are predictable. The human leaned closer to the camera. We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. Every weapon you have, we've used on ourselves. Every tactic you employ, we've endured. You are not facing a civilization that learned war from theory. You are facing a civilization that survived its own worst instincts. Behind the human, Kalen could see the bridge of the human ship, alarms flashing, crew members running, fire. The background. No one was panicking. Your next volley will destroy this vessel, the human continued. We know that. We accepted that when we launched. But while you're killing us, our remaining ships are going to punch through your defensive screen and detonate their reactor cores inside your formation. The human smile faded. 7 of your ships will die with us. That's the math. That's the cost. Are you willing to pay it for one more conquest? The transmission ended. Kalen stared at the blank display. His bridge crew watched him, waiting. On the tactical screen, the remaining human ships spread into a new formation. Not an attack pattern, not a defense. Something else, something that looked like an invitation. Come closer, see what happens. Kalen opened his mandibles to speak, to order another volley, to prove that the Dominion did not bargain with prey. The words would not come, because in that moment he understood. The humans were not fighting to win this battle. They were fighting to prove something, to demonstrate that every victory over them would cost more than the last, to make conquest a calculation of pain rather than power. For the first time in his life, Kalen Vex ordered a retreat. The intelligence analysis took 3 days. 3 days of Kalen Vex standing in the war room of the unbroken promise, watching his officers compile data on a species they had dismissed as irrelevant. 3 days of watching his certainty dissolve. Their military history, the intelligence chief began, her voice carefully neutral. We have accessed their public archives. The information is extensive. She gestured to the main display. Timeline appeared, thousands of years. Compressed into seconds, wars, genocides, revolutions, civil conflicts. The scale was almost incomprehensible. This species has engaged in organized, armed conflict for over 90% of its recorded history. They have fought with every weapon imaginable. Rocks, blades, gunpowder, nuclear fission. They have killed each other by the millions, by the hundreds of millions. The display shifted, images of battlefields, trenches, burning cities, nuclear mushroom clouds, corpses piled in frozen fields. Approximately 70 years before first contact, they fought a global war involving nearly every major population center. Casualties exceeded 80 million. Approximately 40 years before contact, they developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planetary ecosystem. They deployed them twice. The room was silent. Zelari officers who had seen civilizations burn stared at the images with expressions Kalen had never witnessed before. Horror. This is not a warrior species, the intelligence chief continued. Warriors fight for honor, for glory, for the dominance of their culture. Humans fight for something else. She pulled up a different set of records, human literature, philosophy, art, religious texts. They fight because they have never stopped being afraid of each other, of the dark, of their own capacity for destruction. Their entire civilization is built around managing this fear. Their laws, their governments, their alliances, all of it designed to prevent them from turning their weapons on themselves again. The display showed a human ceremony. Soldiers in formal uniforms, medals on chest, flags folded into precise triangles, widows receiving folded cloth, children crying. They have developed elaborate rituals to process their violence. They commemorate their defeats as deeply as their victories. They build monuments to their dead in every city. They teach their young about their worst atrocities, so those atrocities are not repeated. Kalen found his voice. You are describing a species traumatized by itself. Yes, Commander, and that trauma has made them more dangerous than any enemy we have faced. She advanced the display, tactical analyses, battle simulations, comparisons between human combat doctrine and every other species the Dominion had conquered. Other species fight to achieve objectives. Humans fight to eliminate threats. When a human decides you are a threat, they do not seek your surrender. They do not negotiate terms. They calculate the minimum force required to ensure you can never threaten them again. Then they multiply that force by 10. Kalen thought of the human captain on the destroyed vessel, the smile, the blood, the calm acceptance of death. Their psychological profile indicates high tolerance for casualties. The intelligence chief continued. Historical examples show human military units continuing to fight at loss rates exceeding 70%. In some cases, units have fought to complete annihilation rather than surrender. That is not warfare, a junior officer said. That is madness. The intelligence chief looked at him. Madness is a weapon, officer, and humans have perfected it. She pulled up a final set of data: human population figures, industrial capacity, resource availability, scientific output. Their home world is classified as high gravity. Their atmosphere is corrosive. To most species, their native pathogens have no known countermeasures. They have built cities on every continent, including regions of extreme temperature and radiation. They have placed research stations at the bottom of their oceans and on the surface of their moon. The display showed Earth, blue and green, and white, beautiful from orbit. This species did not evolve in a garden. They evolved in a crucible. Every day of their existence has been a struggle against their environment, their biology in themselves. They are not a civilization that discovered war. They are a civilization that war discovered and failed to destroy. Kaelan looked at the image of Earth. He had seen it from a distance, a small blue dot, fragile, delicate. He had been a fool. They do not want to conquer us, Intelligence Chief said quietly. They do not want to dominate us. They want something far simpler. What? To be left alone, and they will burn the galaxy to the ground to ensure it. The war room fell silent. Officers stared at their commander, waiting for orders, waiting for direction. Kaelan looked at the tactical display, the positions of his fleet, the distance to Earth, the human ships still moving in their unpredictable patterns. He had come here to conquer a species that had already conquered itself, and now he had to decide how to survive. That realization opened a channel to Dominion Command. He said, Priority 1 encryption. I need to report what we have found. The communications officer hesitated. Commander, Dominion Command will not accept a report of retreat, our honor. Kaelan turned. His mandibles were set. His eyes burned with something his crew had never seen in their commander. Fear. Honor is a luxury for those who have never faced an enemy that fights like this. Open the channel and pray. Our leaders are wise enough to listen. Dominion Command did not listen. The response came 8 hours later. A transmission from the War Council on the home world. The voice belonged to High Marshal Thrax, a creature of immense age and absolute authority. He had conquered 17 civilizations. He had lost a campaign he had no intention of starting now. You will return to human space immediately, Thrax commanded. You will engage their fleet. You will bombard their orbital infrastructure. You will demonstrate the price of defiance. Kaelan stood rigid in the communication room. High Marshal, I urge reconsideration. The humans are not like the others. Their psychological profile is irrelevant. They are a single system species with primitive technology. Your fleet outnumbers their defenses 3-2-1. You will attack. You will win. This is not a request. The transmission ended. Kaelan stared at the blank screen. His bridge officers watched him, waiting, hoping he would find another way. He could not. Plot a course for Earth, he said. All ships, maximum acceleration, weapons. HUD. The return to human space took 6 days. 6 days of Kaelan reviewing every piece of intelligence. 6 days of watching the fear spread through his crew. 6 days of knowing he was leading his people into something he did not understand. The humans were waiting. Not in orbit, not at the outer perimeter. They were scattered across the solar system, asteroids, moon bases, deep space monitoring stations. They had dispersed their assets, making a single decisive strike impossible. And they had prepared something else. Commander, the sensor officer reported, we are detecting multiple objects on intercept course, thousands Of them small, fast, no-life signs. Kalen felt his stomach tighten. Drone. Weapons. Unknown, they are not responding to. Hails, they are not emitting. Identifiable power signatures, they are. Just coming. The objects resolved on the tactical display. Thousands of metal cylinders, each one. No larger than a ground vehicle, each. One accelerating at a rate that made no sense. Missiles, the tactical officer said. They launched missiles from every platform in the system. We are looking at a saturation attack. Kalen's mind raced. Human missile. Technology was primitive, easily intercepted, but thousands of missiles from every direction, filling the void with explosions and debris. Point defense, he ordered. All batteries create a perimeter. The Zalari fleet opened fire. Energy. Weapons sliced through the darkness, detonating missile after missile, but for everyone destroyed, 3 more appeared. The human platforms were launching faster than the Zalari could track. They're not trying to hit us. Tactical officer realized. They're trying to blind us. Debris filled the space between the fleets. Chaff, smoke, electronic countermeasures. The Zalari sensors went blind. Reestablish targeting, Kalen shouted. Then the real attack came. Human warships emerged from behind the debris cloud. Not 37 this time, over 200, every vessel humanity could launch. From orbital defense platforms to converted cargo haulers, they surged forward with a single purpose: kill the enemy fleet. The battle lasted 47 minutes. Zalari energy weapons carved through human ships like they were made of paper. Entire crews died in seconds. Reactors detonated, hulls shattered, but the humans kept coming. Boarding pods attached to Zalari cruisers, human soldiers with magnetic boots and plasma cutters carved through bulkheads. They fought room to room, corridor to corridor. They did not take prisoners. Kalen watched from the unbroken promise as 3 Zalari destroyers went dark. Their crews were dead. Their systems were compromised. Their captains had been dragged from their command chairs and executed on their own bridges. Commander, the communications officer, screamed. The human flagship is hailing us. Kalen did not have to ask who was calling. The same human male appeared on the display. More blood this time. Burned arm, eyes that had seen too much and kept seeing. Your High Marshal refused our surrender. Did he tell you that? Kalen stared. You offered surrender. Before your fleet returned, we offered to negotiate terms. Your High Marshal said there would be no negotiations. He said we would be made an example. The human leaned back. His ship shuddered around him. Alarm screamed. You have 43 ships remaining. We have 62. Your weapons are better. Our tactics are worse for you. The human gestured to something off screen. We have located your supply lines, your reinforcement routes, your communication channels to Dominion Command. In the next 15 minutes, we're going to destroy all of them. Not disable, not disrupt. Destroy. Your fleet will be stranded in this system. Your crews will starve. Your ships will drift. Kalen felt the world tilt. You cannot know our supply routes. The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Your intelligence officer spent 3 days in our archives learning about us. Did you think we would not spend those same 3 days learning about you? The transmission ended. On the tactical display, Kalen watched his supply depot 3 light-years away disappear from the sensors. The humans had struck first, not in defense, in retaliation. He had made a terrible mistake. All ships, Kalen said, his voice hollow. Emergency retreat, full burn. Get us out of this system. The unbroken promise turned and fled. Behind it, human ships pursued, not to kill, to chase, to remind the Zalari what it felt like to be hunted. The war changed after the Battle of Earth. Not because the Zalari lost, they had not lost, not yet, but because the humans refused to fight the war. The Dominion understood. Kalen learned this lesson repeatedly. Over the following weeks, his fleet, damaged and demoralized, limped toward Dominion space. The humans followed, not in a straight line, not in a formation he could predict. They appeared at random intervals, struck supply convoys, destroyed communication relays, then vanished. They are fighting like parasites, the tactical officer complained. There is no honor in this. Honor is irrelevant, Kalen replied. They are winning. The numbers proved it. In the 3 weeks since the Battle of Earth, the Zalari had lost 12 supply ships, 4 refueling stations, and a dry dock facility. The humans had lost nothing except expendable drones and empty cargo vessels they had deliberately placed as bait. Kalen had studied their tactics obsessively. They never engaged when the odds were against them. They never fought fair. They used deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare with a skill that bordered on art. And they had begun targeting something new: Zalari morale. Commander, the communications officer said, her voice troubled, the humans are broadcasting propaganda throughout Dominion space. They have accessed our civilian networks. The display flickered. Images of Zalari ships burning, Zalari soldiers captured, Zalari civilians watching their homes destroyed, all set to human music. Haunting, sad, designed to provoke grief rather than anger. They are trying to break our will to fight, Kalen realized. They are not targeting our weapons, they are targeting our hearts. The propaganda worked on Dominion. Worlds far from the front lines, civilians began demanding an end to the war. On military outposts, soldiers questioned the purpose of a conflict that brought only death. The War Council raged, but they could not stop the transmissions. Then the humans escalated. A task force of 20 human ships jumped into the Parnax system, home to the Dominion's primary shipyard. They did not attack the military facilities. They attacked the civilian habitat, not to kill, to demonstrate. They destroyed the atmosphere. Processors, not the domes, not the population, just the machines that kept the air breathable. Then they broadcast a message. Your shipyard will be non-functional in 30 days. Your workers will evacuate or suffocate. You have that long to surrender your military command. The War Council was outraged, but they could not stop it. The humans had positioned their fleet between the shipyard and any relief force. Any attack would take weeks to organize. Weeks the civilians did not have. Kalen watched the disaster unfold from his command deck. He had been right about the humans from the beginning. They were not warriors, they were something far more dangerous. They were engineers of defeat. Commander, his intelligence chief, said, I have received a communication. Not through official channels, a private message for your eyes only. Kalen read the message. It was from a Human, not the captain from Earth. Someone new, someone who claimed to represent a faction within humanity that wanted to end the war. Your dominion is dying, you know this. We know this, the question is how many of your people will die with it. We offer a solution, meet us at the following coordinates, come alone. No weapons. The coordinates were in neutral space. Dead system, no planets, no station. Just empty void and cold stars. Kalen read the message 3 times. His officers watched him, waiting for his decision. Prepare a shuttle, he said finally. I am going to meet them. Commander, this could be a trap. Of course it could be a trap, but humans have already proven they could kill us whenever they wished. If they wanted me dead, I would be dead. He looked at the display, at the image of Earth still hanging in his tactical archive, the blue marble, the crucible. World, I need to understand what we are fighting, because until I do, we cannot win. The shuttle departed an hour later. Kalen sat alone in the small cabin. Watching the stars slide past, he had no weapons, no armor, no protection except the thin hull between him and the void. He had never felt so vulnerable. The human ship waited at the rendezvous point, smaller than he expected, older. Scars on its hull from weapons fire. It looked like it had survived things that should have killed it. The shuttle docked, the airlock cycled. Kalen stepped through into the human vessel. The interior was dim, functional, no decorations, no honors, just bare metal and exposed wiring, a species that built for purpose, not for pride. The human who greeted him was female, older than the captain he had seen before, gray hair, wrinkled face, eyes that had watched centuries pass. Commander Vex, she said, thank you for coming. You know my name. We know many things about you, your career, your family, your doubts about this war. Kalen felt cold. What do you want? The human gestured for him to follow. They walked through the ship's corridors, past crew members who did not look up from their work, past compartments filled with equipment Kalen did not recognize. They stopped in a small room, a table, 2 chairs, a window looking out at the stars. The human sat down, invited him to do the same. I want to show you something, she said, something we do not share with anyone, something that explains everything you have seen. She touched a control, the window darkened, images appeared, not of humans, of Zalari. We have been watching your species for a long time, before you ever found us, before you ever decided we were worth conquering. And GT snorts. And GT, we have seen your wars, your victories, your defeats. The images shifted. Zalari soldiers, Zalari civilians, Zalari children. You believe war is honorable. You believe combat proves worth. You believe the strong deserve to rule. The human leaned forward, her eyes locked onto his. We believed those things too once. Then we nearly destroyed ourselves. We learned that war is not honor, war is failure. War is the admission that every other solution has failed. War is the last resort of those who have run out of ideas. She touched the control again. The images faded. The stars returned. We do not want to conquer you, Commander. We do not want to destroy you. We want you to understand something. When a species that has survived itself tells you that war is a mistake, you should listen. Kalen sat in silence. The human watched him patient waiting. "What do you want from me?" he asked. Finally, "We want you to go home. We want you to tell your war council what you have learned. We want you to end this before more of your people die. And if the war council refuses..." The human's expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted, grew harder, colder. "Then we will end it for them, and, Commander, you do not want to see the methods we have prepared." The mission was called Whisper. Kalen learned this later when the war was over and the histories were written. At the time, he knew only that something had changed. The humans had stopped talking and started moving. His meeting with the human woman had shaken him, not because of her threats, because of her sincerity. She had not wanted him to fear her, she had wanted him to understand, and understanding, Kalen realized, was far more terrifying than fear. He returned to the unbroken promise and reported to the War Council. He told them what he had seen, what he had learned, what the humans were capable of. They called him a coward. They stripped him of his command. They appointed a new commander to lead the fleet against humanity. Kalen watched from the observation deck as the unbroken promise turned toward Earth once more. He did not protest. He did not argue. He simply waited, because he knew what the humans would do. The attack came 12 hours later, not against the fleet, against the home world. A single human ship dropped out of faster than light travel above the Zelari home planet. Not a warship, not a bomber, a converted research vessel carrying a single piece of equipment, a device the humans called a memory killer. The ship broadcast a signal on every frequency, not a threat, not a demand, just a quiet message. "We are not here to kill you. We are here to free you." Then the device activated. It did not destroy buildings, did not kill people, did not damage anything physical. It targeted something far more precious: data, every archive on the planet, every record, every document, every piece of stored information. The Zalari had spent millennia building their civilization, their history, their culture, their military doctrine, their genetic records, all of it stored in digital archives protected by the best security in the galaxy. The humans erased it all in 90 seconds. Not deleted, not encrypted, erased. Wiped clean, as if it had never existed. The War Council went insane. Generals screamed at technicians. Technicians screamed at each other. No one could restore the data. No one could even find fragments. The memory killer had been designed with one purpose: complete annihilation of information. But the humans were not finished. The second phase of Whisper began. Broadcasts flooded Zelari space, not propaganda this time, truth. The truth about the Dominion's wars, the truth about the species they had conquered, the truth about the atrocities committed in the name of honor, and the truth about humanity. "We are coming," the broadcast said. "Not to conquer, not to destroy, to end. The Dominion ends here. Your choice is simple: surrender or face what comes next." On the Zelari home world, chaos erupted. Without their archives, the government could not function, laws could not be referenced, orders could not be verified, military units received contradictory commands, supply chains fractured, communication networks collapsed. The warrior caste, built on centuries of tradition, found itself without memory, without identity, without purpose. Kalen watched from his quarters as they Dominion tore itself apart. He had been right about the humans, they had not targeted weapons or soldiers, they had targeted the very concept of Zalari civilization. And it was working. Commander, a voice at his door, one of his former officers, the fleet is in disarray. The new commander has lost control. Ships are refusing orders. Crews are demanding answers we cannot provide. Kalen stood, walked to the door, looked at the officer's face, saw the same confusion and fear that gripped the entire Dominion. What do we do? The officer asked. Kalen thought of the human woman, her calm eyes, her patient voice, her terrible sincerity. We surrender, he said before they show us what comes next. He did not wait for approval. He did not consult the War Council. He walked to the communication center, pushed past the panicking technicians, and opened a channel to Earth. This is Commander Kalen Vex of the Zalori Dominion. I am authorized to accept unconditional surrender. A pause, then the human woman's voice. Quiet, tired. Accepted, stand by for instructions. Kalen closed his eyes. The war was over. The Dominion had lost, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity was already planning for what came after. He had never been more afraid in his life. The surrender ceremony took place in orbit above Earth. Kalen represented the Dominion, the human woman whose name he finally learned as Eliana Vance represented humanity. They stood on the observation deck of a neutral station. Behind them, representatives from 40 Galactic Council species watched in stunned silence. No one had believed the Dominion would surrender. No one had believed a single system species could defeat a 300-world empire. No one had believed humanity was anything except a footnote in galactic history. They had been wrong about everything. The terms are simple, Aliana said. Her voice carried through the stations. Atmosphere processors, calm, measured. Final, all Dominion military forces stand down immediately, all conquered species will be granted independence. All war criminals will be extradited to neutral territory for trial. She paused, looked at Kalen, looked at the watching ambassadors, looked at the cameras broadcasting across the galaxy. And the Zalari people will submit to cultural rehabilitation. You will learn to live without war. You will learn to resolve conflicts without violence. You will learn to be something other than conquerors. The watching ambassadors stirred. Cultural rehabilitation. They had never heard such a term. They had never imagined a victor dictating how a defeated species should think. Kalen felt the weight of the moment. His people had been warriors for millennia. War was not just what they did, it was who they were, and the humans were going to take that away. If we refuse, he asked. Elena looked at him. Her eyes held no anger, no triumph, just the same patience he had seen in their first meeting. Then we will leave you alone. Your empire will crumble. Your subject species will tear you apart. Your children will grow up in the ruins of your ambition, and you will have no one to blame but yourselves. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. Meant only for him. We are not offering you mercy, Commander. We are offering you a chance. A chance to become something better than what you were, a chance to survive. Kalen looked at the display showing the Zalari home world, his home, his people, his history, all of it gone, erased by human technology, all of it waiting to be rebuilt. He thought of his children, his grandchildren, the generations who would come after. He thought about what kind of galaxy he wanted them to inherit. He signed the surrender. The station erupted into controlled chaos. Ambassadors rushed to report to their governments. Technicians broadcast the news across the galaxy. Historians scrambled to record the moment. Kalen stood alone on the observation deck, watching Earth turn below him. The blue marble, the crucible world, the species that had taught the galaxy lesson no one would forget. Aliana Vance approached, stood beside him, said nothing. How did you know? Kalen asked. How did you know you would win? Aliana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. We never know. That's the secret, Commander. We fight not because we are certain of victory. We fight because the alternative is unthinkable. We fight because surrender is worse than death. We fight because we have already survived the worst thing we could imagine ourselves. She turned to face him. Your people thought they were masters of war. They were wrong. War has no masters. War has only survivors, and the only way to survive war is to stop fighting it. Kalen nodded. He understood now. Not everything, but enough. What happens to us now? Aliana looked back at Earth, at the blue and green and white, at the world that had nearly destroyed itself 100 times and kept going. Now you learn to live in peace. It will be harder than war. It will be more painful than defeat, but in the end, Commander, it will be worth it. She walked away. Kalen watched her go. Then he turned back to the stars, to the future, to the long, difficult road ahead. The war was over. The real work had just begun. 50 years later, the military academy at Annapolis had a new wing, not for human students, for Zalari, for Veth, for Rishan, for every species that had once looked at humanity and seen weakness. Kalen Vex stood at the podium. He was old now. His armor hung in a museum. His mandibles had grayed. His movements were slower, but his eyes were the same. Sharp, watching, learning. Cadets, he said, today you begin your first lesson in human military history. I will be your instructor. The students sat in perfect silence. Zalari humans and others, all wearing the same uniform, all studying the same curriculum, all learning the same truth. You will learn about their wars, their weapons, their tactics, but that is not the most important lesson. The most important lesson is this. He paused, looked at the young faces, at the future of the galaxy. Humans are not the strongest species. They are not the smartest. They are not the most advanced. They are something else, something the Dominion learned too late. He walked to the display, pulled up an image, Earth, blue and green and white. They are the species that looked into the abyss of their own destruction and did not blink. They are the species that turned their worst instincts into their greatest strength. They are the species that survived themselves. The image shifted, battlefields burning, cities, nuclear fire, all the horrors of human history. Every weapon you will ever face, they have already used on themselves. Every tactic you will ever encounter, they have already endured. Every fear you will ever feel, they have already conquered. He turned back to the students. The Dominion believed war had rules. We were wrong. War has only consequences. And the species that understands consequences better than anyone else is humanity. A human cadet raised a hand. Kalen nodded. Commander Vex, why do you teach us? After everything your people did, after everything we did to you. Kalen considered the question. He had asked himself the same thing many times. The answer had come slowly, painfully, over decades of reflection. Because I learned something from they humans that no warrior ever taught me. I learned that victory is not about defeating your enemy. Victory is about building something that does not need enemies. He looked at the human cadet, young, bright, full of potential. Your ancestors taught my people that lesson. The least I can do is teach it to yours. The class continued. Kalen walked among the students, answering questions, sharing stories, building understanding. The war was a memory now, a scar on the galaxy's history, but the lessons of that war would never fade. In the years that followed, the former Zelari officers who had once conquered worlds became the galaxy's most passionate advocates for peace. They had seen what humanity could do. They had felt what humanity could endure. They had learned what humanity already knew. War is not glory. War is not honor. War is the failure of every other option. And the only way to win a war is to make sure it never happens again. The Galactic Council changed. New laws were written. New alliances formed. The species that had once conquered and been conquered learned to coexist, not because they trusted each other, because they feared what would happen if they did not. And humanity went back to work, building, creating, arguing, fighting small wars and making big mistakes, being human, flawed and brilliant and terrifying and hopeful. They had proven something to the galaxy. Not that they were the strongest, not that they were the smartest, just that they were the ones who had looked into the darkest parts of themselves and refused to look away. The Zalari had claimed to be war's masters. Then humanity proved them wrong, and the galaxy would never be the same. The end.